Imagine this scene. You're in a meeting room with walls covered in diplomas. The table is surrounded by shiny shoes, neatly tailored suits, confident smiles, people who have mastered the system. Then someone speaks up, a younger voice, perhaps dressed less formally, posing a question deeper than anyone expected. Not a rude question, not even confrontational, but one that challenges the very premise on which everyone in that room has built their identity. And suddenly everything changes, the room freezes. People glance at each other, unsure how to respond. Someone clears their throat, another shifts in their seat, but no one answers. Not because the question is silly, but because it's too direct. You've just witnessed the oldest threat to any elite group, the presence of an unmanageable mind, the self-taught individual. Make no mistake, self-taught people don't unsettle the elite because they lack credentials. They unsettle them because they lack dependence. They're not bound by the same gatekeepers, not validated by the same institutions, not shaped by the same invisible hands that train people to think within acceptable limits. They behave differently. They ask questions no curriculum dares to include. They think with a kind of freedom that can't be bought, bribed, or bullied. And that terrifies those who built their status on compliance disguised as excellence. Niccolo Machiavelli saw this clearly more than 500 years ago. The father of political realism, the master observer of power and its manipulation. He understood something that still makes today's elite uneasy. True power doesn't lie in titles or institutions. It lies in the ability to think independently, see clearly, and ask profound questions. And anyone who does that without permission becomes unpredictable, which, for those in power, is the most dangerous kind of person. As Machiavelli himself noted in The Prince, the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. This implies that true insight comes not from solitary genius, but from surrounding oneself with capable minds. Yet the self-taught individual often stands alone, relying on personal virtue, that Machiavellian blend of self-reliance, self-assertion, self-discipline, and self-knowledge. In Machiavelli's view, such independence is a form of power that elites fear because it cannot be easily co-opted or controlled. Let's make one thing clear. In every stable society, knowledge is never neutral. It's curated, filtered, distributed through tightly controlled channels, from universities, expert panels, media organizations, to government certifications. We're taught that this is simply how society maintains standards. But Machiavelli would scoff at that naive belief. In The Prince, he argued that rulers shouldn't seek to enlighten the masses, but to control them, not out of cruelty, but necessity. Because once people start thinking for themselves, questioning the rules, the structure begins to crack. He warned that to maintain peace, you must control the flow of thought, not just censor it, but domesticate it, package it in rituals, exams, titles, degrees. So people forget the difference between real understanding and institutional approval. And that's where self-taught people become a threat to the point where they bypass all of that. They learn not because they're told to, but because they must. Their learning is urgent, raw, unpolished, and brutally honest. They don't follow syllabi, they follow curiosity. They don't aim for diplomas, they aim for clarity. And so, they often reach truths that the system never once touched. This is what makes them hard to control. They don't speak the approved language. They don't wear the academic disguise. They may lack polish, but they possess substance. And when they speak, they expose the uncomfortable gap between knowledge and authority, between wisdom and permission, between true insight and performative expertise. And that's exactly why the elite can't stand them, because the system isn't built to honor those who see clearly. It's built to reward those who comply effectively. It values consistency over originality, procedure over insight. And if someone walks in without permission, holding up a mirror and saying, "All of this is meaningless," they don't just threaten decorum, they threaten the foundation. They are the variables the system didn't anticipate. Glitches in the matrix, heretics in the temple of credentials. The elite's discomfort isn't from pride, it's from survival, because every self-taught mind is living proof that their monopoly on knowledge is an illusion, that you don't need their approval to understand reality, that learning isn't owned by them. And once people realize that, once they see that intellect isn't bestowed but cultivated, the entire hierarchy starts to wobble. This is the Machiavellian nightmare, not revolution through violence, but through awareness, through quiet, independent minds that can't be bought, bribed, or intimidated, through people who have tasted truth without being fed it. And once you've done that, once you've learned without permission, no one can truly control you anymore. And that's when the fear sharpens. Because our people don't just absorb different knowledge, they ask different questions, the kind that shake pillars. While others ask, "How can I climb the ladder?" they ask, "Why does the ladder matter?" In a world obsessed with status, achievements, and prestige, they don't seek to win faster. They question if the game is worth playing. And above all, that's what makes them dangerous, because in a system designed to reward compliance, questioning the purpose behind the rules isn't seen as curiosity. It's seen as disobedience. They're not rude or rebellious. They just don't accept the assumptions. They don't take "because that's how it works" as an answer. They want to know why. Why is success measured this way? Why do we worship titles? Why do we entrust our self-worth to institutions, to approvals, to praises? Machiavelli warned about this centuries ago. He understood that every power structure must protect its legitimacy above all, not morality, efficiency, or truth. He made this clear to the prince. Those who challenge the foundations of power, who don't just vie for position within the system, but question the system's existence, must be discredited, neutralized, or erased. Not because they're wrong, but because they're too right. To illustrate, consider historical figures who embodied this self-taught defiance, challenging elites through independent intellect. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, was largely self-educated, spending his youth in rural isolation with limited formal schooling. Yet, he rose to confront the entrenched powers of slavery and secession, questioning the moral and legal foundations of a divided nation. His clarity of thought, honed through voracious reading of law and history without institutional imprimatur, unnerved the Southern aristocracy and Northern political machines alike. Benjamin Franklin, another autodidact, escaped the bounds of apprenticeship to become a polymath, inventor, diplomat, and founder. His experiments and writings bypassed elite academies, democratizing knowledge and challenging colonial hierarchies. Maxim Gorky, the Russian writer, emerged from poverty through self-study, his raw narratives exposing the hypocrisies of Tsarist and later Soviet elites, making him a thorn in the side of controlled narratives. Grandma Moses, the folk artist, began painting in her 70s without formal training, her works gaining acclaim and subtly undermining the gate-kept world of fine art dominated by schooled virtuosos. These individuals didn't just succeed outside the system, they redefined it, proving Machiavelli's point that independent minds are unpredictable forces capable of upending established orders. And self-taught people, without trying, often find themselves in that role, not as revolutionaries, but as clarifiers. They see through the haze. They don't just fight for their place in the system. They challenge the system's right to exist. They look clearly, feel deeply, think boldly, speak carefully, and question everything. Because your questions aren't noise. They're the first whispers of a better world. And if society tries to silence you with labels, with indifference, with subtle contempt, let that be your signal. The discomfort you cause isn't a flaw, it's a clue. You're getting close to something real, so keep going. If you've ever felt judged, sidelined, or undervalued for being self-taught, know this: the problem isn't you. You're the beginning of the solution. Because every time a self-taught mind refuses to be tamed, the world shifts a little closer to real freedom. Keep learning, but not to impress, not to perform, not to collect badges from broken systems. Keep learning to stay free, to stay awake, to stay true to yourself. Because once you know you can learn without permission, think without approval, speak without endorsement, there's no going back. And more importantly, no need to. The world needs you, not the edited version of you, not the version that fits someone else's frame. The real you, the one who sees clearly, feels deeply, thinks boldly, speaks carefully, and questions everything. Because your questions aren't noise. They're the first whispers of a better world. And if society tries to muzzle you with labels, with coldness, with implicit disdain, let that be your cue. The unease you provoke isn't a defect, it's evidence. You're approaching something genuine, so persist. If you feel the questions in you are too much to bear, your thoughts too inconvenient, your thirst for truth too intense, let me tell you something no institution will. The issue isn't with you. You're the dawn of the fix. For each self-taught soul that defies domestication, the globe inches toward authentic liberty. Continue absorbing, but not for acclaim, not for show, not to amass emblems from flawed regimes. Absorb to remain unbound, vigilant, authentic. For when you realize learning requires no sanction, pondering no consent, voicing no ratification, retreat becomes impossible and crucially unnecessary. The cosmos requires you, not your sanitized self, not the self conforming to another's mold. The genuine you, who perceives sharply, senses profoundly, contemplates audaciously, articulates prudently, and interrogates all. For your inquiries are not clamor, they are the initial murmurs of a superior realm. And should society endeavor to stifle you with tags, with aloofness, with covert scorn, allow that to signal you. The disquiet you engender is not a blemish, it's testimony. You are nearing something profound. Thus, endure, but let's delve deeper into why this dynamic persists across eras. Machiavelli, in his observations, highlighted that power thrives on predictability and control. In The Prince, he advises rulers to appear virtuous while acting as necessity demands. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. Self-taught individuals pierce this veil. Their independence exposes the performative nature of elite authority. They embody what Machiavelli called virtue, not moral goodness, but the capacity for self-reliance and bold action. This virtue allows them to navigate without the crutches of institutional validation, making them exemplars of true power that elites, bound by their own dependencies, envy, and fear. Consider how this plays out in modern contexts. Tech innovators like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, though not purely self-taught, often bypassed traditional paths, challenging academic and corporate elites with disruptive ideas born from eclectic, self-directed learning. Their success underscores Machiavelli's warning. Unpredictable minds can shatter established orders, not through force, but through innovation that renders old gatekeepers obsolete. Furthermore, the elite's response is often a subtle campaign of marginalization, as Machiavelli might predict, discredit to maintain legitimacy. Self-taught challengers are labeled amateurs or eccentrics, their insights dismissed for lacking polish. Yet, history abounds with such figures who prevailed. Leonardo da Vinci, largely self-educated in anatomy and engineering, revolutionized art and science, outshining courtly scholars. Michael Faraday, with minimal formal schooling, advanced electromagnetism, humbling the scientific establishment. These examples illustrate that self-education fosters a raw, unfiltered pursuit of truth, echoing Machiavelli's realism. Knowledge is power, and when acquired independently, it becomes a weapon against complacency. In extending this reflection, recognize that embracing self-teaching isn't isolation, it's empowerment. As Machiavelli implied, fortune favors the bold who adapt without reliance on others' approval. So, if you find yourself questioning the ladder while others climb, know you're not alone. You're part of a timeless lineage challenging elites toward progress. Persist in your quest, for in self-mastery lies the ultimate defiance.